7-sentence starters in support of Active Hope, a structured conversation of inspiring scope, based on the spiral of the word that reconnects. For the details, see the handout. Here's an example with Donta Council and Chris Johnstone. So should we just give it a go and see where it goes? So
for sure.
What I was going to suggest is just in relation to time, I'm sure we could talk for ages on any of these, but I was going to suggest that, I don't know if you've got a timer handy. I've got a mobile phone that will go ping after a minute. If you have two, that's handy, because then we can time each other. And what I was going to suggest is that we just set a timer for a minute for each of these 7 things. But when it's time, if the person listening, if they just raise their hand like that, and it's not like you've got to stop now, but it's more like, okay, that's a minute up. And so it's probably good to be coming into landing rather than, carry on. So if you're in the middle of a flow, like finish your flow, but that's the kind of, so that it's just a bit over a minute for each one. Or you might see the hand and think, oh, good, thank goodness, I'm ready to stop just now.
Okay.
And what I was going to suggest is that we take the first 2 together. So one person does number 1 and number 2, and then we swap over. So one person listens, the other person speaks, and the listener, all you just need to do is just give your full attention. And it's just really a chance to hear each other. And the idea of starting with the words I love is I'd love to hear what you're into, what delights you, what are the things that make you smile? What are you really, the special things, people, places, experience? And when we talk about those, it lifts us. Very good research around, for example, resilience, gratitude practices strengthen resilience. If we kind of stock up a bit on some resourcing ourselves with attention to what we love, it then puts us in a stronger position to look at the stuff that's more difficult. I think we'll probably finish on by about noon. If we stray over by a few minutes, is that okay for you?
That's totally okay. Oh, yeah.
So the core question then is, who'd like to go first? Would you go first or second? Just for the first 2. Okay, so are you happy to time me? Have you got a timer?
Yep.
So if you tell me when to start a minute, and so do a minute on I love, and then a minute on I'd like to thank. And you just, when my minute's up, you just put a hand up, and that's me kind of drawing to a close, and then move to the next one.
Okay. So I'm going to do that. Okay. And so are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, sounds good. All right. And you can go.
Okay, so I love, we have apple trees in our garden, and I just love that. It's like a dream come true for me. And I just love being able to eat fruit that we've grown. I love where we live. I live in the north of Scotland with Kirsty, my wife, who we've got a thing called the Teeny Weeny Farm. She grows flowers and sells them. That's her kind of work. And I love the beauty of nature and flowers that I've been exposed to. I was like flower illiterate for most of my life until just recently. I love the sense that we can step up and make a difference in our lives. Is that me up my minute? Okay, so moving on to number 2. So just tell me when to start.
Go ahead.
So I'd like to thank you, Dante, just jumping into the unknown here with willingness and enthusiasm, and also for the work you do too. And I want to thank all of those, everybody who kind of shows up with a deep desire to act for, the common good, really. It's like, it really inspires me what I see. And it's kind of like giving ourselves to a larger story. I want to thank the important teachers who've helped me along on my part of that. Joanna Macy, David Gershon. I want to thank my parents. My dad, who died 17 years ago, my mum in her late 80s now. I want to thank my friends. I want to thank my friends who notice me, who care about me, who support me. Um, I want to thank I want to thank trees. Like with in so many ways. I'm surrounded by trees where I live, and they nourish and support and restore me. Is how am I doing? Is that
Yep.
that's about
Yep.
it?
This is time.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, so you get the gist.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
it's so are you ready to go? I'd love to hear what you love beginning now.
Okay. I love spending time with people. I love spending time with people that's without distraction and truly just connecting with people on an intimate basis. I love reading. I love being able to figure out new things and solve new problems and to gain new perspectives about life. I love walking. I like to feel the sun on my skin and to feel it makes me feel vibrant in some ways and makes me feel rejuvenated. So I've learned to really like being outside a lot more recently. Um, I love candy. I've always been someone who loves sweets, and so one of my favorite candies is Starburst. Um, I love being connected to my work on a day-to-day basis. I love being able to like what I do. And that's really important to me. So it doesn't really necessarily feel like work all the time. It really feels like I'm doing what I'm meant to do. Sure.
And you'd love to thank. Um, ready to go when you are.
What's the prompt again? I'm sorry.
I'd like to thank. I'd like to
Okay.
thank anyone,
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
Over to you.
Okay. So I think I'd like to thank my mom for really instilling in me how to be a good person. Um, when I think about my mom, I always think about someone who's extremely, I mean, the epitome of resilience and someone who's been able to adjust and cope and respond in every aspect of life, and being able to have that as an example to really follow throughout my life and my career. I'm thankful for my friends. My friends have been the ultimate support. When I think about social support and really being there, I'm thankful for my colleagues who continue really, they're vulnerable with me. We do work together, we collaborate without question. I'm thankful for hard times because hard times have really built a lot of my character and really put my character to the test in ways that have really expanded my own personal faith, um, and reconnected me back into this work at times when I'm exhausted. Um, yep. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're on a journey around a spiral. So we're beginning with gratitude, and we're now turning to um, our pain, really, the kind of the things that are difficult to look at, and particularly a sentence that begins, looking at the future we're heading into, my concerns include. And I don't know whether you'd like to continue speaking or have me go first. Can go either way.
Yeah. I can go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've got in front of you, looking at the future we're heading into, my concerns include.
Looking at the future that we're heading into, my concerns include not elevating people who live in the margins of society. I'm concerned that we will continue to marginalize folks who have not been able to access the economies, who have not been able to access wealth, who have not been able to have some collective or individual upward mobility. Um, my concern is that we will continue to be selfish, and that we will continue to be greedy in the ways that really impact people of all people, not just people of color, not just people who are low to moderate income, but people in general. My concern is that we won't listen and we won't be intentional with our hearts. We won't open up our hearts in ways that we can empathize and sympathize with people, so that they do have the resources and the things they need to really just have a better quality of life. We don't all have to be rich. We don't all have to be wealthy, but we do want to have decent lives. And so my concern is that people won't live decent lives.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you time me for a minute.
Yep. And you are ready to go.
So looking at the future we're heading into, my concerns include, and echoing many of yours, Dante, my concerns include that it's something about like we are stuck in a tram line. My concern is that we continue to be stuck in a tram line where we've got such a narrow view of what a good life is. And it's kind of like we're hypnotized by this view that a good life is about basically getting on and climbing up in this kind of race to be celebrated and important within a very narrow set of measures about what is valuable. And what it leads to is just kind of misery all around. It's like addiction, really, where the people who have it can end up being some of the, just incredibly miserable at huge cost to everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yes. I think that we're on the same page. We're on the same page.
Thank you. Thank you. So carrying round to the next one is saying, well, okay, facing that, what inspires me is, shall I carry on? Go first?
Sure.
Or, so what, just tell me when you're ready.
Yep, I'm ready.
So what inspires me is, I've got a friend, Mark, he wrote a book called The Moneyless Man, and he spent 3 years living without money. And I know that's not, I know some people live without money anyway, and I'm not saying we should all live without money, but it was something about just saying, hey, somehow we just assume that money is so important that we can't get by without it. And he lived in this caravan that someone had lent him, and he basically got really into like foraging food, and he set up something called the free economy. So the free economy is basically based around kind of like gift economy of people donating time and resources for shared benefit. And actually he has a really good quality of life. I mean, he faces more discomfort in winter than I would like, but yeah, anyway, so he inspires me.
Awesome.
And over to you. What inspires you? Anyway, a minute beginning.
Sure. What inspires me? I think what inspires me is that I know that there's work that still needs to be done. On a day-to-day basis, I'm able to see the beauty of humanity where, there is progress. And so we do see better qualities of lives. We see more access. We see where people are really able to elevate themselves. But really what inspires me is that I know that there's work that needs to be done. We have a criminal justice system that discriminatorily impacts folks here. We have folks who still are, when I drive on the street in DC, I still see people who are on the corners who are homeless and who still need food in one of the most gentrifying areas in the country, right? And so, why are people still poor? Why are people still homeless? That's the work that still inspires me, because in some ways I know that I can't save everyone, but I do know that I have the agency and resources to do things within my capacity. And so I'll continue to do that. I'm committed to that. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And I don't know if you want to carry on from that, because it might just seem like a natural flow of the next three, which is looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is. And then a part I'd like to play in support of that is, and then a step I'll take in the next week is, so to take those three together, or if you like, I can go first.
Okay. I'll let you take a stab at it first.
Okay, so just
Okay.
tell me when to start.
Okay, give me 1 second. And we are ready.
So looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is, um, I think what I deeply hope for is something about like really waking up to how much we're missing out by being on the wrong track. I think like there's a wrong track which we've just kind of got misled, really. And I think here I worked for years in the addictions recovery field, with people with severe alcohol dependence. And what there was a friend who's in recovery for a long time. He said he didn't just give up drinking, he threw it away.
Mm,
And because he actually found recovery was like a much better way. And so I think what I really hope for is recovery. We have different things we recover from, but if we kind of think what we're recovering towards, it's about a better way. What I deeply hope for is that we find a common story of recovery that we can engage in together. And so if I carry on for the next one, taking these three together, uh,
okay.
a part I'd like to play in support of this is, just tell me when
Okay.
to go.
You
Okay,
ready to
so
go?
a part I'd like to play in support of this is, well, um, I think seeing recovery as not just individual, but as a collective process, and to see that there's so much to learn from addictions recovery, but also that's just one of the many sources that we can draw from. I feel like I really learned so much from my clients, but also it's like there needs to be a pooling together saying, hey, what are some of the different stories of recovery that are needed, some of the different ingredients of recovery that are needed. But actually this is something that it can be a win-win-win. It can be a win for individuals, it can be a win for communities and society, and it can be a win for the planet. And I know, maybe that's like rose tinted, because also I'm completely aware that we are heading for the most awful times in all kinds of ways. But at the same time, if we have that as like a destination to head for, okay, there's all kinds of things in the way, but yeah, so the part I'd like to play is something about reclaiming or putting myself behind a vision of hope that I really have my heart in, and being active in supporting that. And so a step I'll take towards this in the next week is,
Okay.
I go.
Yep.
So I guess also as part of my part in this is looking at the role of conversations in supporting recovery processes. And what I'm going to do in the next week is I'm going to have more of these conversations, and more, so having a conversation, but then having a conversation about conversation, and saying, how do we apply design to conversation so that we can design the types of conversation that nudge us on and encourage us on, rather than what can also happen in conversation is that we can just feel somehow like undermined or disheartened or feeling, what's the point?
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Wow, that was really good.
Thank you for your deep ears and listening. Um, and so just that sequence now, you'll go. So look, have you got the sentences, or shall I say them?
So I was going to say I was going to pull them back up really quickly, but I didn't get a chance to pull them up because I was really distracted because I wanted to hear what you had to say. Um,
If you want to pull them
but
up, or I can read them out, it's up to you.
yep, if you could read them, that'd be great.
Okay, so looking at the future we're heading into, what I deeply hope for is.
Looking into the future, What I'm deeply hopeful is, I think I'm really hopeful in this space for true healing to happen with communities. True healing meaning that we are intentional about taking a look at our own patterns and behaviors, and really reflecting on who benefits from this? Why do I behave in this way? And really being able to think, particularly within a disaster context, why is it that I may not understand, or I may not care about communities in ways that the world sees it, or other people? And really being able to take a look and say, what are my biases? What's the ideology that I was raised on? And in what ways have I challenged those ideologies? And what ways have I been complicit? And I think the more that we are intentional about the healing, being able to grow from what we've learned, and being able to elevate it into something where all people can benefit. I think that's what I'm really hopeful for when I think about moving forward. This space, particularly with COVID-19, I think a lot of us have a bit more time to be more introspective and spend time with ourselves, and to really think about what are the things that we really want and desire out of life.
Thank you. Thank you. So now a part I'd like to play in support of this is...
A part that I like to play in support of this is, one is really making sure that I'm holding myself accountable to my own healing. And so making sure that I'm also being active in this process. And so that means on a day-to-day basis that I'm also being intentional about my own renewal process. And so I'm also thinking about, Dante, what makes you thankful? Dante, how is the work that you're doing impacting people in a way that makes sense for me? Dante, what is it that you could be doing more of that you haven't really necessarily done because you're scared, you don't know what to anticipate, you may not know the connections, and how can I move past that? And I think that for me, I'm interested in how can I help other folks move in those conversations or be introspective and think about ways that they can also be doing some of this work, because a lot of this, we're the administrators, we're the folks that are facilitating conversations, but we also have a burden for ourselves to make sure that we're being genuine and authentic in this space as well. And so that people also understand, and they're able to empathize and see an example of what it looks like.
Thank you. And if you were to look at a step I'll take towards this in the next week is...
A step that I'll take in the next week is that I think that for me, in the workplace, I'm going to think about how can I, in a workplace that we're committed to inclusion and equity, how can we take that a step further? And so how can, even as a social justice advocate and practitioner, how can I have conversations with people who understand this work, but also may have their own psychological boundaries when it comes to expanding this work, right? And so what does it mean to be inclusive when you work in a place that's already burdened with people who need all these different resources, but you understand that there's a need, but you may not connect yourselves in ways that where you can empathize. And so, instead of just providing a direct service, you're really able to understand the story and to connect them to other resources, and then to be able to think about, if this were me, what would I want someone to do for me?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering how this was for you. This, like, we've just been round a kind of spiral. And I, just to say, for me, I feel like I've met you much more, just like here I am, the other side
Yes.
of the Atlantic. And I also feel alongside you in your work too.
Yeah, this is the way this is actually, I will say that this exercise, what I think I really appreciated about this exercise is that typically when we come into a conversation around something that deals with vulnerabilities or the impacts of disaster, it's already heavy. It's heavy on our hearts and our minds, and so we know that it's something that we have to prepare ourselves for, energize ourselves for. But starting off, I think with the things that are important to us, it was easy for me to be able to have that conversation. And so because I'm connected to these things that inspire me, I know that I know that for me, I'm better able to, say what I really want to do and be confident in that, and then utilize my own agency in making sure that I'm following that. And so it kind of gave me a framework to really operate off of initially. And so but it didn't feel, the conversation didn't feel heavy as it normally would. It didn't feel like, oh, I have to go out and save the world right now. It felt like, you know what, this is a process. And as I think about this process, the process can change. But at least I have some guidance. I have some thought processes. I know that I can articulate my thoughts and it makes sense to me. And so I think that released some of the anxiety of not knowing, you know? And so I think that this was good.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, just taking in what you're saying, there's something about when we look at stuff that's heavy, we can feel overwhelmed, and that can lead people to feel paralyzed. There was a big survey done in the UK, like 3,000 people. They asked about what kinds of feelings come up when they think about world problems. And the commonest feeling was some powerlessness. And that when people feel like, well, I hear people say, well, you can't change the world, there's nothing you can do. That it can lead to kind of people closing down, a kind of like closing off. And I suppose it's kind of like, what opens up a sense of possibility that, okay, I can't do everything, but I can do something, and it's worth doing.
Yes. Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. Oh my goodness. Yes.
That makes sense to you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And this kind of conversation, do you think it supported that? It supported that sense of, okay, there's something I can do.
It does. And I think that on a day-to-day basis, when I think about my own work, I think about, all the things that I could be doing. And I think for me, it kind of helped me to kind of take a step back and say, you know what, there are things that you love, there are things that you appreciate. And in this world, there is something you can do. And I don't think it has to be everything, right? I think what I call is the Mother Teresa effect, where you want to just kind of save the world. And it's like, you know what, I can be my own Mother Teresa right here, and have the same type of impact. And so it's inspiring for sure, for sure. It's almost like a rededication to the work with a new perspective. And I think part of that is that in some ways to kind of refill your cup, you need different types of energies and different perspective. And so this really helps to give, someone who does this type of work, we know that, oh, we can do all these great things, but sometimes it's nice to kind of take a step back and take a new perspective to the work. And to how can we know there's always going to be a need for something, but in this space, especially right now where, COVID-19, I think has really exacerbated. There's a lot of things that have happened, but there's a lot of beauty in it too. And I think rethinking what that can look like now, with this type of conversation is really just like, okay, it's not that bad, and there's something that I can do, and it doesn't feel overwhelming, and it's actionable. It's something that I can work towards.
It's very helpful hearing you, and the words that you use are rededication. And I suppose seeing this as a practice, like a practice, some people, they do mindfulness practice, some people do Tai Chi practice, and this is a kind of active hope support practice. And you can do it by yourself, like writing just those 7 things, and there's lots of different sentence starters you can use. But also, one of the things that really helps is a sense that you're not alone, just like you were saying with the facilitated conversations that you've had. To do something like this, either in pairs or small groups, where we can hear each other and have that kind of rededication, filling our cups with
Hmm.
and alongside each other. Do you think something like this could take off in the hazards and disaster addressing community?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Uh,
I'd love to see this happen in that space.